Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, we're back. The Real Money Coach is here live and in living color. We're so excited tonight. Oh my goodness. I hope you have your notepad. I hope you have a pen because it's time to get busy. We're going to be talking about a very important subject. And it's something that, one of the things that I really believe is no one wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to fail. Right? Nobody plans to fail in life. But yet, at the same time, so many people are failing to plan. And so I'd like for you right now to post where you're watching from, because again, the Real Money Coach is all about making a difference. And I know we have people that, tune in just every week to be with us. And I want to say thank you. So we're going to find out who's here with us. Go ahead and type what state are you watching from, or what country? I mean, let's be real. We, many times have people from overseas tuning in. And so it's very exciting. Our guest tonight is a lady who is really on a mission, and very grateful to have her on. She's very busy because the work that she and her team are doing is making a positive difference. It truly is. And, this is somebody who's actually I've known on a personal level where she's been to my mother's home. Okay. My cousin Leslie is one of her clients, and brought her attorney Amy Griffin to our house, for a family presentation. And so it's just really nice, when you know that somebody's living with purpose and they're on point. And so let me ask you a question. I said nobody plans to fail, but are we failing to plan? You see, do you have a plan? I went to Amy's website, and the first thing, she's basically an estate planner and business attorney. That's who she is, and that's what her team does. And the question on her website page is this: do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? And do you have a plan that creates a legacy for future generations? Do you have a plan to provide for your family? And do you have a plan to protect your personal property? My goodness. Well, let's go ahead and get this thing rolling, because this is going to be a phenomenal show. And I would love to go ahead and bring my colleague up, because we have a question we're going to ask of all of you. Let's go ahead and bring Tony up, because it's so important. And I see Karen from Tacoma, Washington. Okay. So she's the first one, Tony. And so, Tony, I think you're on mute, brother. But, the thing is that
I was muted, man. I was muted. All right. Yeah. We got Ruth Bell. She's in the house tonight. So awesome, man. I know we're going to have a lot of people tuning in tonight, because this topic that we're going to talk about tonight is something that a lot of people ask about. There's a lot of people who ask about it. And Marlon, I have a trivia question for you. What does Bob Marley, Aretha Franklin, John Singleton, and Prince all have in common?
Is that a rhetorical question? Is that a question for me, or a question for the audience? Because I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I think you know the answer. What's the answer, Marlon?
The answer is they all passed away without a will.
Yeah, without having their state plans in place. And so we're seeing that so much. And of course, we hear about it when it's celebrities. We hear about it, when it's Prince that has, all this money. And then we hear about Aretha Franklin, because she's got all these handwritten wills stuck in Bibles and all different places like that. And so, so we hear about those things. But the thing that I really want to know from our audience, and we're going to unpack this a little bit later, is how many people do you think actually pass without having a will? And then how many African-American people? So those are the two questions that I want to pose out there. I want to throw this out there. I see Alice Martin is with us tonight. So it's good to have Alice, and Dr. Benita Harris is with us. And the Sweet McKinney, that family's with us. And so just tell us, what do you think? What's your guess? How many people pass without a will? And then how many African-American people in our community? And Marlon, here's the thing about it is COVID-19. I mean, obviously that's big news, right? COVID-19, I don't know what the number is up to, the number of people who have passed now with COVID-19. I mean, it's well over 100,000, right? And I think you're muted. And then how many African-American people and we're hearing a lot in the news about. Good evening, D. Love that. Great, you're with us tonight. D is from South Carolina. So look. So far, man, we got North Carolina, we got South Carolina, we got Washington. They're coming in. They're coming in to get the information from the expert tonight.
Right.
And so here's the thing: all the deaths that we're seeing with COVID-19, and we know that the proportion of those that are African American is out of whack, right? And I've seen all kinds of statistics, but we got to get our house in order. We got to get our house in order. And then let's put it on top of that. We know what we've seen happen in terms of with the police brutality, right? So we know all about that. We've seen that in the news. We know what's happened in Atlanta and Milwaukee and all across the country, and all of the names, too many that we can even name on our show tonight. So it's time to get the house in order.
Sure.
And we have spent a lot of time talking to people about the different things. When we talk about the 4 pillars of intergenerational wealth transfer, we talk about proper management of your assets. We talk about proper placement of life insurance and investments. We talk about real estate, and just put a plug in for next week. We're going to have Emmert Peace, one of the biggest African-American brokers, real estate brokers in the country. He's going to be with us next week. And so, again, we have these pillars, and this is an important part of the pillar. If you spend all your time accumulating these wonderful assets, stock market, real estate, insurance, and we don't have the proper plan in place, it reminds me of the scripture. What profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? What profit a man to gather all these assets and then be caught in the spend down process? And I know we're going to talk about the spend down process because I hear questions about that all the time. How do you avoid the spend down process? The question tonight that I will pose for our guests is, does a trust help you to limit your exposure to the spend down process? And all those things, Marlon. So I'm excited about tonight.
I see you are, man. So here's the question for our viewers. What percentage do you think that individuals, in the United States, percentage of let's just say, white that die without an estate plan? Okay. And then what percentage do you think it is that African Americans die without an estate plan? Tony, your original question about, okay, where are we with the deaths? Right now in the United States, COVID-19, there have been 2.23 million people that have been confirmed as COVID-19 positive. 698,000 have recovered. 120,000, Tony, 120,000 people have died as a result of COVID-19.
Wow.
Throughout the world, it's 8.24 million people throughout the world. There's been 446,000 deaths, almost 500,000 people have died. So that's the answer to your you had asked, where are we right now? 120,000 in the United States and 446,000 in the world have died. Wow. And so again, the question is for all of us, what percentage of people, we can break it down ethnically speaking, right? White people, what's the percentage you think for every 100 white people that die, how many have an estate plan, right? And for every 100 people, African-American that die, what's the percentage of them that you think has an estate plan? So go ahead and just type a percentage. We just want to see, that's the question of the hour, because our special guest is going to break it down. Why is there, I'm kind of giving a hint, there is a disparity, there's a difference in the percentage. So we'd love to see what you think it is. And I see we got some more visitors, Tony, as well.
Yeah, we've got Euro Dave from Massachusetts. We got Terry. Terry's a faithful watcher in California. So yeah, man. So it's great to see everyone coming in and getting this great information tonight. And so I want to just show, when we say estate plan, what are we talking about? And if we could have Chris bring up that graphic for me. there's a lot involved in the estate plan. And actually what we're going to do tonight is we're going to have our guests unpack these things around this graphic. And here it is. And so you have, at the basic level, you have things like a will, and then you have power of attorney, medical directives, and then we move around to beneficiary directives, a living trust, life insurance, organized records. Organized records. That is so important. I know I used to do a lot of presentations live, when we were doing that. And I would ask in particular about life insurance. I would say to the crowd, I'd say, how many of you have life insurance? Right. And people raise their hand, not enough, but maybe 50% of them raise their hand. And then I would ask this question. Those of you who have your hands raised, do you know where your insurance policy is?
Woo!
And the hands would fall.
Okay.
And my answer, my comeback to them was this: if you can't find the policy while you are living,
that's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but that's funny, Tony. That's funny. That's funny. While you're living. Ooh, that's hard. That's hard. Oh God. Oh, come on.
What is your family gonna do?
That ain't funny, man. I gotta.
It's a reality, right?
Yeah.
You gotta know where this stuff is at. I mean, there's so much going. There's unclaimed, man. You got unclaimed life insurance benefits. You got all this stuff out there, that ends up on the list, but it's a serious matter. It's like you don't know where it is. And then especially when you think about in our community, right? Mm-hmm. You think about those little debit policies where they're coming by and they were collecting the money and all those types of things, and those little $500,000 policies, those little things that we used to do like that. And nobody knows where it is. The company doesn't exist anymore. The Life of Georgia doesn't exist anymore. That company is no longer around. A lot of the Black life insurance companies are going around. Thank God there's still brokerages like ours and stuff like that. But the thing about it is a lot of those companies have gone away and no one knows where to go. And this is the thing that I would find, Marlon, is that they wouldn't know. And so the company goes out of business. And so then they start getting mail from another company. A lot of them was this company in Michigan, Jackson National Life. Jackson National Life took over a whole block of Georgia life insurance company, right? Georgia was a Black life insurance company. When Georgia Life went out of business, Jackson National Life took over those policies. So now I'm getting mail from this company called Jackson National Life. I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. I think it's an advertisement, so I throw it away.
Ouch.
So I don't even know who my coverage is with. I mean, I've spent hours and hours with people trying to find their life policy. Where is it?
Right.
And so those are just things that are it seems so basic, but yet it's so important is just to know those things.
So do you suggest, Tony, that, for each one of us, we talk about health directives and, you have, who's, power of attorney and so on and so forth. Do you suggest that, for your estate, I mean, you should have a copy, right? But also maybe have another loved one or loved ones or, your business colleague or, somebody on your dream team. I mean, is that the key? Would you say that, make sure you have some copies with trusted individuals?
Well, and I think probably we'll let Amy get into that too, because she probably has some great tips for us as far as organizing. Okay. But what I would tell people this on a basic level with life insurance, right, is that you make sure that your beneficiaries have a copy of the policy.
Okay.
So a lot of times we would help them find that policy that they couldn't find, get a copy of it, get a coverage letter, but make sure your beneficiaries know what it is. And I would make a point of I love to meet beneficiaries. And so and I always would say, when the Lord calls you home, I don't want your daughter, your son, your grandchild, or whoever,
Right.
that be the first time they ever talk to me.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
Let me be a family friend, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's important. And I want to tell one more story, man. I want to tell this story, and then we're gonna get to Amy. Okay, here's the story, man. And I think this also goes to this whole thing of having a checkup, right? You need to have a financial checkup. You need to have a financial checkup every year. You know, your life insurance, your health insurance, all those things. And so I was at this gentleman's house.
Okay.
I was at this gentleman's house, and we were talking about life insurance. And I said, well, you know, let me see what you got. And he said, I can't find a policy. I said, okay, well, who are you paying? I don't know. Okay, so let's look at your bank statement. So we go to the bank statement. The bank statement has who's drafting. So we call the company. I won't mention the company. It's a name you would recognize. Okay. And so I call the company, and I'm with Mr. You know, let's say Mr. Johnson. I'm with Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
And we want to just verify this policy. It's in effect. Yes. Death benefit. Okay. And I always would ask this question whenever I do a life insurance checkup is, can you verify who the beneficiary is? Because, you know, one of the things about it is that, you know, people get married, so names change, or people get divorced, or it was your sister and y'all fell out, you know, last family reunion. You don't want her to be your beneficiary anymore, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so the representative on the phone says to me, he says, well, let me get my supervisor. When I'm at my beneficiary, I was like, okay, well, this is kind of strange. They don't normally do that. Supervisor comes on the phone. I need to get my manager. And there's something going on now.
Right.
So the manager comes on the phone, and, you know, we're kind of pressing it a little bit. Now it's like, well, you know, we're just trying to find out who the beneficiary is. They had this gentleman, Mr. Johnson, listed as his own beneficiary. So he was on the policy as the insured and the beneficiary.
Whoa.
Now, imagine what would happen when Mr. Johnson passed if that were the case.
Oh my goodness.
And so those are the types of things for life insurance checkup that are important. But we're getting more deep than that tonight. We're going to talk about estate planning. We're going to talk about legacy. And you know, Eugene unpacked some things for us the last couple of weeks, and now it's just taking it to the next level of planning.
Yeah, and you know, Tony, I mean, you posed a question, and so here we've got some answers, right? You know, Brother Euro said 40% versus 12%. I wonder who's 40 and who's 12. Okay, I'm just saying. Karen says 80% versus 20%. Interesting. LD Sweet McKinney says 60% white, 95% black. Just a wild guess. Okay. And then Dr. Williams says 10% or less. Okay. So very interesting. So it's a why. And I want to thank everybody for, you know, just sharing what you think it is, right? Because again, you know, our whole point of bringing up that question is that it's just, you know, we're going to show that not everyone is planning. And we can, based on tonight's show, our intention is that at least now your consciousness is raised, and you'll understand the importance of you and your family making sure that you have your house in order, as Tony said. So go ahead, Tony.
Well, let's do this, man. Let's introduce our special guest tonight. I was at a meeting. I first met her at a meeting over in Durham a few years ago, where I was on a little panel. I might have even been filling in for you on that panel, Marlon. And so I got a chance to meet her. I've been seeing some of the work she's done. She did a workshop with Eugene Mitchell last weekend, the weekend before. And that's what's like, man, she's the one that we need to have on our show. And so it is attorney Amy Griffin. She's the managing attorney of the Griffin firm. I'm just reading it straight off of her bio. Amy is a business and estate planning attorney licensed in Massachusetts, Maryland, District of Columbia, but she can help you wherever you are. Amy is recognized by the Small Business Administration as Massachusetts and New England Small Business Champion.
Wow.
Amy works to build business, for profitability. All right, so she's a builder. She's a wealth strategist.
Oh, wow.
And we work with individuals and families to create generational wealth.
Love it.
Strategies. She uses trust and estate planning to support families to build generational wealth using tools that maximize. This is at my heart right here. That minimizes taxation. All about minimizing the taxes and build equity for successful generations. And so it goes on. But with that, I want to bring Miss Amy Griffin to the screen with us on stage and let her say hello to everyone. And she's going to give us the answer to the question. She's going to give us the facts.
I've been, thank you. I've been back here like, oh my gosh. I'm going to use some of your jokes, Tony, too, by the way, right?
I love it. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. This is great. I've seen you work from afar. And when I was over at that meeting in Durham, I was impressed. I think you were the primary person to put that together. Yet North Carolina Mutual was there, and some other folks. Then some folks from M&F Bank came in, the vice president of M&F Bank. And then I saw you do that again in Atlanta, and I think the Atlanta summit, even Dr. Frazier might have been the guest. So I've seen you work from afar, so I'm really happy to have you with us tonight, and just looking forward to you sharing some really good information.
Thank you so much, because this is a conversation we all need to have. So I thank you for the opportunity to share.
So what's the answer to that question, Amy?
The answer is 50% of the general population don't have an estate plan, and 70% of Black folk don't have an estate plan.
Whoa.
Wow. And so not having an estate plan, what does that expose you to?
Well, first and foremost, it exposes you and your family to, more so than your family to, crazy fighting.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Well, actually, crazy fighting, it happens when you pass away. But one of the things that we always try to talk about is, I've had people say to me, I don't care, I'll be dead. But a part of estate planning is 3 parts. Not just what happens when you die, but also what happens if you don't die but can't make decisions for yourself.
Yes.
You do care about that, right? Because you don't want just Pookie to come in and say, I got you, right? Right. I'll manage your checkbook for you.
Right.
Or have your ex-husband say, pull the plug, right? So we want to make sure that we have not just what happens when we die, but what happens if we don't die but can't make decisions for ourselves. But what I really get excited about is the legacy that you can create, right? Being thoughtful about how do we create a legacy to position those people who come on be after us.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
And that's what's exciting and empowering about doing an estate plan.
That is awesome. It just, she said that, kind of remind me of another story, man. It's just, I've paid out $100,000 one time to a lady's ex-husband. Many of you have heard me share that story before. Is because he was listed on the life insurance. They were divorced. She was remarried, had kids with a new husband, but never took him off as the beneficiary. So guess what?
One of the things you said, which I disagree with you on, because you're nice. So this is the deal. I'm a lawyer, right?
Okay.
Nobody ever calls a lawyer to say I'm having the best day ever. They just call us when they're having the not great days.
Okay.
I wouldn't be quick to give people, the beneficiaries, a copy of the policy, because what if I choose to change the beneficiary? Right? And I believe that, so one of the things we do at our firm is we call people every year to say, do you still like the people you like? You still have the stuff you have? Because people make changes, right? We get divorced, or we should be divorced. So being thoughtful about how do we make sure that the right people have access to the information. What we do in the firm is you're right. People don't. I was cracking up thinking about a woman that I spent 4 hours with her, with trying to find the life insurance policy that her husband bought in 1964.
Wow.
And the different people that it went through, different companies that it went through, but it's for $54. It's like it costs her more than that for me to find it, right?
See, the people I work with, they were lucky. I didn't charge them anything. You know, I was just
See, that's what I said. Those lawyers, we are just not as nice as you guys. You guys are a whole lot nicer.
Yeah. Hey, Amy, I do have a question, Amy. Why is it? What is it? You mentioned 50%, 70% do not have, right? And, one of the things I always say is that, none of us are getting out of this life alive. Why is it that we're not planning? Right? The legacy wealth that you mentioned. And you also said something, we were kind of talking, but you said about the fighting, right? If you don't have your plan laid out, man, you are causing so much additional stress, pain, fighting, turmoil for your loved ones, right? Because everyone's gonna say, oh, no, she wanted to do this. No, she wanted to do that. So why is it, Amy, from your perspective, why, the majority of people do not have?
Well, a lot of times, I'll tell you like some of the 4 reasons that people tell me. First and foremost, people say, I don't have enough to do an estate plan.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, if you have a life, that's worth protecting. Because, I don't know what George Floyd's situation was before all of this.
Yeah,
but now he's got a whole lot. I always say to people also, if you are, living on the street and you get hit by a municipal bus, all of a sudden you're going to come into a whole lot of money, probably. So don't foretell that you're not going to have anything. My thing is plan now, be faithful over little, then you can be, master over much. Put it in position, right? The time to prepare isn't when you've got it, right? But creating the strategy for it at any time. Because I say our lives are so worth planning for. Right? Then the people say also procrastination. Because it's not necessarily an easy conversation. Let's be clear. It's not the easiest conversation. We try to do it with levity. We try to have the conversation in a way that's empowering as opposed to when you die. What coffin cover do you want? But we talk about how do you want to build up your next generation? What do you want to do for your kids and your grandkids? How do you want to be, what legacy do you want to leave to your alma mater? So having that kind of conversation focuses. Yeah, there are some parts that are a little sad. When we talk about, I think you had on your, when we posted the graphic of advanced directives. We were talking earlier about, I don't know how many people are old enough to remember, there was a case with Terri Schiavo. Terri Schiavo was a woman in Florida who was an insurance clerk, but she was taking some fen or whatever and went into a coma at the age of 26. 15 years later, her husband's like, can we pull the plug? She would not want to live this way. She's in a persistent vegetative state. Her mom said, yes, she would want to live this way. She'd want to live as long as she could live. And, that grief, that going back and forth for the people who love her the most were at each other. And then it got to a point where it went to the courts. Then it went to the Supreme Court. Right? Can you imagine the distress? Nobody wins that case.
Right.
But if you don't make the decisions clear, I always say all the time, I have 2 kids, and my daughter would keep me plugged in as long as there's electricity on the earth. My son's wife might say, your mom's lived long enough. Let's let her go.
Right.
But we don't want them to have to make that decision.
We don't want that burden placed on them. Absolutely. Right. What's interesting, Amy, and we think about generational things, and we mention Aretha Franklin, and it just reminded me of Reverend C.L. Franklin. Reverend C.L. Franklin, Aretha's dad, stayed in a vegetated coma state for years. Because of the family couldn't decide whether or not to let him go. And then we come, and now we have another estate issues with Aretha. I mean, we got to break this chain.
Right. So when we do better, our kids can do better. When we see, I've had kids say, oh, yeah, my mom had a trust. And so I am, and it was simple, I'm going to do that. And I've had people who say it was a mess. Greed and grief are the things, those huge emotions that make you do some crazy stuff.
Right. I always say this as a preacher, I would say, if you want to see the true family come out, a wedding and a funeral. You're gonna get it, boy. You're gonna find out what this family's really made of in those two instances. So that's great information. I love what you're sharing already, and we haven't really even gotten into the meat of it. So that's awesome. So when it comes to estate planning, you said a lot of people say I don't have enough, and then I think about people who have children, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Thank God for His mercy and grace, because if you have small children and you don't have those things in place now, and we know what's happening in our community, right? What happens in our community, what happens more so than not is that the mothers, grandparents now will take and raise the kids, right? Mm-hmm. We see that a lot, but there's a whole nother side to that.
So actually, let me start back a little bit. Now, let's say ideally you have a wonderful, 2-parent family that's solid. My mom and dad are great. His mom and dad are great. We're out at our date night and we get knocked off together. There's going to be a fight over who gets the kids. If the teenage kid down the street is babysitting during this time, kids are going to go into foster care initially. Right? Because the police are not going to be responsible for selecting who the child goes to, right? That's a risk. So they need to be thoughtful about putting a standby guardianship designation in place. Identify who is it that you want to raise your children. One of the things that we do with our firm is also, in addition to that, talk about what are the guidelines that you want to have. We do a child development plan. So that we can identify what are the things that we want, not just, okay, these people, but these are the guidelines that I want you to employ when raising my kids. I want my values. Right.
So wow, that's interesting. I never even thought of it, heard of that. That's why you do what you do. That's why you're on the show tonight. Because I never thought, because you always think about just custody. I never thought about, what type of education, what type of healthcare, religious matters, and all those types of things that normally we see contested in divorces and that type of thing. But when someone's gone, I mean, those are the same issues that have to be dealt with.
That's right. And so one of the things that we encourage people to do is, child development is so, dynamic. I mean, now I encourage people to talk about, do you want your kid to even play those kinds of contact sports where concussion is real?
Right.
Right. So as there are so many things that you can factor in. It's like I say to people all the time, we need to identify what our values are. For me, it was education. And for me, it was, I wanted to make sure that my kids and my kids' kids. Now it's like, I feel like now that I have grandkids, the scripture says, a good man leaves inheritance for his children. He don't say about leaving inheritance for your children. Right.
Right. I tell my kids that skip them. Right.
That's right. They are lost. My parents were supposed to do that. Right. But then also, but one of the things that my greatest revelation is in the employment of insurance. It is, I try to encourage everybody who has, works with me, if they have kids, get a trust and buy life insurance for their grandchildren. Write it in the trust and try to get as much as you can. I mean, when I learned from George Fraser about the $1 billion baby,
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to do that all the time so that we can create generational wealth. And it's not on anybody but us to start it out.
Wow.
And then put the rules in the trust so that every grandchild that comes out will not deal with poverty because I've covered it.
Right.
I love that. And that's the plan. That's about the plan. And I want to encourage all of our viewers, go ahead. You can hit the share button. You can do a watch party, because again, what we're about to do, the second half of the show, we're now going to really get into the nitty gritty. And so we want you to go ahead and also, if you have any questions, this is really for us. It's a virtual town hall. So type any questions that you have in the chat box. so that we can bring those out and have, Attorney Griffin, share. We've even got people, Carrie is watching from Australia. Okay. That's how important it is. Right. And so, we have to get you over to Australia, Attorney Griffin. Okay.
Well, I have a client who just moved to Australia.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So yeah, so please, share, hit the share button, let other family and friends know, that, you're connected with on Facebook or YouTube. And also, if you have any questions, type those in the chat box, because this is your time. We have this phenomenal expert here, this leader, and, use this time. I mean, I know we're not gonna be able to get to all the questions, but let's do our best to get to your question. So go ahead, Tony.
Well, okay, so now let's look at this. We have this graphic that we showed. One of the things was the will. And so we've kind of talked a little bit about that. Anything more you'd like to share about the will itself or anything like that, Amy?
I do. Now, one of the things that TV has misled us to believe, they've misled us to believe that, after someone dies, you take the will and you go to the lawyer and you say, I need a reading of the will, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's a whole, the big mahogany, room. And that's just a TV thing. It's not a thing. When people call me and ask me to read the will, I will do it. For $500 an hour, but and I'll say, but you can read too. It has no impact. My reading has no impact on it. What we need to know is that the will initiates the probate process. And the probate process is the time when all of your assets are, in essence, are frozen. Anything that is in your name, only in your name, and nobody else's name, with no beneficiary attached, has to go through the court proceedings, which is to allow any creditors to come forward first to get their distribution, to get their piece of your stuff. Like Sears and Roebuck credit card get paid before your cousins do, right?
Right.
So that's part of the probate process, because you put a legal notice in the paper. And so the creditors get to come forward and then say, oh yes, Amy owed me for the, for her school loan, for the whatever. And that gets paid before my kids or my grandkids. And that's part of the probate process. So it takes, sometimes up to usually 2 years to get your estate completed and wrapped up, depending on your state. Depending on the state that you have, it is, you have to do an accounting, you have to get a bond, often get a bond and, an insurance to make sure. So it's more than a notion. And so a lot of times I try to encourage people to avoid probate.
So tell us how to avoid probate. Because I always say the will doesn't avoid probate, right?
The will does not avoid probate.
And I think the just to get a hearing, it was like an 18-month waiting list in Wayne County just to get a
hearing. That wasn't even with COVID.
That was before COVID. Exactly. Exactly. So how do we avoid probate? So
there are a couple of ways to avoid probate. First and foremost, if you look at the assets in your like bank accounts and your life insurance, they avoid probate. They have anything that has a beneficiary attached to it doesn't go through the probate status or through the probate process. And in addition, anything that's jointly owned does not go through the probate process typically. Right. So I'll say like my husband and I own a house together. So when he dies first, of course, it goes.
Amy, keeping it real, Jack. Okay. Now.
It comes to me. Right. And then it would go to the heirs based on how it's written in the will. Now, one of the things I always say to people is everybody has a will. The question is, did you write it or did the state write it for you? Right? Because it is there. Most, as we know, 50% of the general population doesn't have it, but the state's got to figure out where this stuff gonna go. So there's a formula that's established, and this is how things are distributed. And be thoughtful about if it's a blended family, somebody's gonna get jacked.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoa.
And one of the things you said earlier, Tony, is that a lot of times grandparents take the family. Now, I love being Black. But one of the things that we tend to do is we do stuff without the benefit of the law. We get divorced without a lawyer because we just leave. Right? We can get married without a lawyer, just come in, without a judge and just come in. We adopt kids without a lawyer, right? And so we don't get bogged down with the law. We just do it. But the problem is when you just do it, the formula doesn't apply. I had people, I had what we thought was ex-husbands show up and say, oh yeah, no, I get my half, right?
Wow.
Because I wasn't here for 40 years, but she did now. Right.
Right. So you have all those movies where you have all these wives show up at the funeral, that kind of stuff. And so you mentioned one of the questions I wanted to ask is what if I own the house and my spouse's name is not on the deed or the mortgage? Talk about the quitclaim deed. Tell me about that piece.
So if you were to pass away and your wife is not on the deed, right? Mm-hmm. The mortgage doesn't matter. Anybody can owe. But if she's not on the deed and you pass away, depending on the state, the fraction may change. But the outcome is your wife would get half or about half, and your kids would get about half, right? So now, so if you have just that one kid, I always say there's one kid or that one kid's spouse who will say, oh yeah, we got to sell that house. I need the money.
Right.
So it is, I always try to encourage people to make sure that you don't give a house to more than one person. And don't put your kid's name on the deed. Don't put the kid's name on the deed.
Yeah.
Right. Although it will avoid probate, it creates a whole bunch of other issues. Right.
Now, in my background with insurance, we always said, hey, don't put the child's name on there, because then if there's a liability lawsuit or something and their name is on the deed, guess what? That property is now part of that. If they get a good attorney and they do the discovery process and they find out your child's name is on your house, guess what? Junior's little accident becomes your accident.
That's right. And in addition, even if Junior doesn't get in a car accident, one of the things I use Washington, D.C. as it's a great extreme, but you're on the street on Sheridan Street. My next door neighbors had, right, his cousin and I lived down the street from each other. But my next door neighbor bought their house for $50,000 years ago. Now the house is worth $650,000.
Okay.
So if they sell the house, there's a capital gain of $600,000 that needs to be taxed, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they transfer it after they pass away, it's as if the kid bought the house for $650,000. However, if they put their kid's name on the deed, it's as if the kid bought it for $50,000. And when they sold it, there's that capital gains of like 20% that they got to pay on the difference between what you bought it for and what you sold it for. Right. And so I encourage people all the time that you want them to get the step up in tax basis. Right. That saves. We had somebody who had to pay $230,000 in capital gains tax.
Wow, that's huge. That's huge. That's
so Amy, unpack that step up tax step. Just what would they need to do in the situation? Yeah, because I want our audience to understand.
So what you want to do is transfer to your children the asset whole, right? So at the highest value, so that they don't. So it's like, so then for your next kid who received that property, maybe they didn't sell it, but when they do try to sell it, their floor is $650,000. Okay. So they bought it for that $650,000, and then when they pass it to their next kid, perhaps it's at the value of $1 million.
Right.
But again, you undermine everything by just adding your kid's name to the deed.
Okay, got it.
Right.
Got it.
That's good. So let's talk. Let's shift a little bit because I know we need to get to this whole thing about a living, irrevocable, revocable trust. let's talk a little bit about that, because as an insurance person, I would always tell people, man, I would tell them you need a trust, and you want to put and you want to correct me if I'm wrong. I tell them the one thing you don't want to put in the trust is your car. But then
I disagree.
You disagree? Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Right. So to start with, there are two major categories of trusts: revocable and irrevocable. And I say to you, you die with nothing in your name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Denise asked a great question, but let me say that you die with nothing in your name, because if there's something in your name that doesn't have a beneficiary, that triggers the probate process.
Okay.
Right? Because you can no longer sign your name. So while a car is insignificant, but we have had to open, when you when you probate something, that means you're exposed to creditors, right? If we can bypass the probate process, creditors don't get attached to you. Like conceptually, I'll die with student loans in my name and they will just go away. They will crawl in the coffin with me, right? But if you have like your bank accounts, that have a designation or transfer on death designation. And some states have property that you can do transfer on death designations for, right? And you did for your property, you can get a step up in tax basis. But if you have to open a probate for anything over what's called sort of the minimal stuff, it creates the space for the creditors. Right. And oftentimes people say, oh, yeah, I pay all of my bills right on time. But if you've had a protracted medical illness, right. And now I'm not telling anybody that not to pay your bills, but I want us to take advantage of everything the law allows. Right. So again, there are two major categories. There's revocable trust, which is an extension of you. It's your social security number, and you would put your principal residence in that revocable trust, because then, of course, you still maintain your homestead exemption and those kinds of things. Then there is the irrevocable trust, right? And the irrevocable trust is like a LLC. It's an asset protection trust. And so if someone were to sue it would, the things in it's contained. If someone were to sue me, anything in my revocable trust is accessible.
Oh.
Right. There's no distinction right there. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And so the reason why I say you have to keep the car in, because we've had this case a couple of weeks ago that they put everything into the trust but the BMW. Mind you, it was a 2008 BMW. So she had to open an estate, had to go through the creditors period, had to go through all of that stuff, because we had to transfer it out of her dad's name. So that's why I say.
So should the car go in the revocable or the irrevocable
trust?
In the revocable trust. So we use this phrase is like you want to own nothing but control everything.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And one of the things that I love about a trust, because I'm really controlling, is that I get to, as we mentioned, like doing that insurance policy for the grandkids. Oh man, it's like I talk to them about what the grade point average they need to get in college. I talk about if indeed that my house that's in there, it is a percentage of what they get is based on what they do. You don't just get money just for breathing. You get to get money for performing. Sure. We don't want to create trust fund babies who are not community contributors.
Wow.
Right? We want to incentivize our values. Right? It's like, I will give you money. I will match your down payment for a house. Right? My life insurance beneficiary is what? The trust.
The trust. And then the trust has all the parameters in which, and we've seen family trusts like this, where if they go to college and they get, they graduate from college, then they get X amount of dollars towards a car, or, those different types of things, so a trust allows you to run things from the grave, right? From the grave.
It's like, exactly, while again, maintaining opportunities for there to be multi-generational wealth. right?
Right. Now, like Amy said, she likes to be in control. And I got a feeling because she said she made it clear that she wasn't going to be the first one to die. So she,
Hey, Anthony, I do have a question that just came in on my text. It says, okay, the revocable, you said put the house, your personal.
Right, you put your personal principal residence in the revocable trust.
And why? And the question was why? Because I thought you said irrevocable. Creditors can't go after. Why put your?
Well, there are two reasons. One of which is your homestead exemption, right?
Mhm.
You will lose your homestead exemption if it's in an irrevocable trust because it's not yours per se when it's in that irrevocable trust, right?
Okay.
But I'll say the exception.
Is that tax? Is that for tax purposes?
For homestead, so if someone were like in DC, if you ever get sued and you own a house and that's all you have, your judgment proof because they can't take your house.
Okay, got it.
Right now, different states have different rules. Like Maryland, you can lose your house for bankruptcy. In DC, you can't. Right. Okay. So the state determines it. But there's also there are cases when I put rental properties in irrevocable trusts. Right? Because we want that asset protection. But also remember this, because it's a creditor's protecting trust, you can't have a mortgage. A lot of times we have people who buy their, they're doing investment stuff. So they'll buy their property with cash or, self-directed IRAs type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. They'll take the money and they'll buy it within. That's the same thing, but you get to control it in a different way. Another way that we do it, and I don't know how many people have heard about Medicaid taking your house, right? And so, if somebody goes to a nursing home, then Medicaid comes and takes your house. So sometimes what we'll do is, if you go into a nursing home, they'll say, spend down all of your assets.
Right.
Your assets are in an irrevocable trust. They're not countable. Irrevocable.
In the revocable trust,
it's extension of you. They can see you. Yep.
Right. And so that's the key too when we start talking about the spend down process. Now, one of the parts of that, though, in most states, the spend down process means you're now eligible for Medicaid. You can keep your home, you can keep your car. There's certain things that you can keep: your home, your car, your wedding ring, $2,000 in cash. Everything else has to be spent down, right?
But you realize that's the eligibility part.
That's the eligibility.
Then there's the recovery part. Right. Okay. So it's after you've spent it down, you've now eligible for Medicaid, and now Medicaid has spent $150,000 on you. You die, they put a lien on your property. If you're if you're a single person and you lived at home, or you're living in your house or whatever, your house doesn't have anybody else's name on it, they will slap a recovery lien on it.
If it's in the revocable, not if it's in the irrevocable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Got it.
That makes sense. So you don't have to be a millionaire to go out and get yourself an irrevocable trust or a revocable trust. And that's what I think, a lot of people think. It's like, well, like you were saying earlier, I don't have enough to do that. But basically anything. I mean, basically, you said if your life is worth anything, it makes sense to have some of these things in place.
Right. Again, I say to people at the age of 18, you should have your first estate plan. And then you should have the basic 3. I mean, granted, you shouldn't have the super duper plan too much to give as much as required. But for the folks who have the base 3 to identify what happens when you die, what happens when you don't die, where do you want to position your stuff? So a power of attorney gives somebody capacity to manage your finances if you are unable to do so. Then the advance directive, we call the healthcare packet, that includes, what decisions you want to make, who speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself, what funeral things do you want to have, and then the last will and testament, which includes what happens to your stuff, who manages your kids. So I also talk about a lot of times the person that you put responsible for you taking care of kids isn't necessarily the same person who's going to manage your money, because they may have had 2 different skill sets.
Okay. Got it. Wow. A lot of great information. So, I mean, we're kind of winding down to the end of our time. Amy, I just want to turn it over to you and just what message do you want to send tonight to all of us?
I want to just encourage people to take action.
Mm.
Don't be the one who just sort of put your heads in the sand to think it's not going to happen to me. I guarantee it's going to happen to you one day or another. So find somebody that you connect with. Don't just go to, the Griffin firm would love to serve you, but if not us, go somewhere. But make sure that it's somebody who is an estate planning attorney, not just, don't go to the divorce lawyer for estate plan, but make sure who's someone who does this principally. Have that conversation, and you have to like them because you need to tell them all your business and take an action.
You gonna tell them all your business?
I tell them all your business because we want to know. We want to know it all, right? Which kid is really the good kid, right?
That's good.
So is anybody listening? Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I get it.
And so, Amy, what would be the next step? I mean, definitely we'll post your website, on this page. Is there a way, I think one of the things that people we always strive to empower people, right? So that when they come to your firm, at least they have a working knowledge of, what they're looking at. Or I don't know, on your website, is there like a questionnaire they can first complete to get some thoughts?
If you send us an email, we send what's called an estate inventory. So we get a list of the kind of stuff that you have and the values that you have, what's important to you. And that's how we move forward, because we may have 27 estate plans and no one's is going to look exactly the same because everybody's values are different.
Sure.
That's good. That's very good. Thank you.
One of the things that people always ask is like, well, how much is that going to cost? And I always avoid that. And I tell them probably somewhere less than $10,000.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know what? There are people who spend more than that, but typically the base plan is about $1,000, right, to get the basic stuff, and then that's with the will, the power of attorney, and the healthcare proxy. We're actually doing, if you know any first line health providers, we're doing those for free for them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
During the COVID thing, we're doing that for free. And then secondarily, if we're doing the revocable trust, then it's about $5,000. And that's the trust, the deed, the power of attorney, the will, and the healthcare directive.
So that would be everything, all that together.
That's right.
So the power of attorney would cover the financial things, the health, the medical directive, the health would cover the health things. Because we always say you need both.
You need both.
Okay.
You need both. Right. And probably different people to be the fiduciaries for each of those cases.
Okay. That sounds good. I mean, it was some wonderful information. And so thank you. This was I was looking forward to this. I was looking forward to being able to share this with our audience. Again, because so many people ask about these things, and we tell them that it's important, but we're very upfront. We're not attorneys. We can give you some general things, but what we did tonight is we brought the expert into the room, and so right. we love being able to do that. And I know you were involved with a legacy association too, or something like that.
The Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals. Is that what you're? Yes, association. Yes, where it's we know that we stay in our lane, right? But we know that together we're better. So it is, how do we work with financial advisors like y'all to because we know we want our people to be together, our clients, the people that we call the Griffin Firm family, to have the best. And we only know what we know. So we want to make sure that the accountants are in the room, that everybody has a personal board of directors is what we talk about.
Right.
So
that's good.
Yeah. And we believe in that too. We believe that you got to have your team together. That's your tax people, your health people, your attorney, the whole gamut, and just bringing a team together and being able to just put a solid plan together. Because it's time. It's time. There's been so much, and one of the things, maybe we might even have Ebony come, Marlon, one time, is there's so many money and property that have passed through the hands of our people. Just having a right plan could make all the difference for you. So,
right. So we're doing Zoom meetings all the time because we just need to educate folks, help people think about the possibilities. That's one of the things I realize. People don't realize the possibilities. And that's why I'm thrilled about being able to connect with folks.
That's good. Now, I want to make sure, I see Sister Denise had written, do you transfer at death?
So yeah, I always say it depends, right? So
Okay.
in some jurisdictions, they allow a transfer on death for your real property, right? So avoiding the probate process. Oh, I think she actually, in response to the question of when do you transfer your house, so when we were talking about the real property, yes, that's the best time to transfer it, or transfer it through a revocable trust and passing on to the next generation. But you should not coexist on the deed at the same time. So we don't just add our children's name to the deed at the same time that we're on. Right.
You know, and I've seen this, and it concerns me. I've seen a lot of advertising right now about telling people to transfer stock, transfer equities to their family members now because of it being low, and that's a smaller transfer. But then again, when that appreciates, then they're going to end up having to be the one stuck with the capital gains tax. And that's the other thing we always tell people, is that you want to make sure you have balance, because what we find that there's a lot of people that are very heavy, and you probably see it in the DMV area, especially very large TSP accounts, these accounts that are tax qualified monies. And when those tax qualified monies, regardless of what it is, when that transfers and that goes to the beneficiaries, it's a non-spouse, they're going to be paying ordinary income tax. They don't even get the favorable taxable gains. And we could stretch that out in a stretch IRA, but those rules went away in January.
With the Secure Act.
So now when you look at that and you say, if I have $1 million and I want to transfer that to my family, and it's in a tax qualified account, then I got to have a plan in place to minimize the taxes, or at least have something in place to pay the taxes.
Exactly. And so some of the things that we talk about are dynasty trusts. When we have those folks who have significant wealth, or like businesses that are significant, and then we put them in a dynasty trust so that the income is only paid. It's in Delaware, so that there's no state income tax until it's distributed to the non-Delaware resident. So that's why it's great to have the conversation with your advisors, because you don't know what the possibilities are. You don't know the questions asked if you don't, you're not in the room.
Right. Awesome.
Wow. This has been great, Amy. I hope you've enjoyed it. This
I
hour
have enjoyed it.
Right?
It absolutely did.
Yeah, and I'm just so grateful that Tony, reached out to you and made it happen. He's just masterful in bringing the best of the best. So, any other closing comments, Tony, Amy? And
I have one. I just want Amy to know that she's got an open invitation to come back and share with us again. And don't be surprised if we call on you again to come and share something, especially as things evolve. What we in our society, as we're seeing things are changing with the deaths and COVID. I mean, I think it's probably much like a will or trust. The reason why you review those once a year is because it needs to be a living document that changes. And so our goal is to bring just really relevant information, make it educational, make it actionable, and make it life-changing. And you did exactly that for us tonight. So I said thank you again.
You're very welcome. This morning I was doing a presentation on business succession planning, being mindful of how do we need, especially in light of the COVID. So
that's awesome.
So with that, you talk about buy-sell agreements and all
Absolutely.
Those things. Well, we'll have to have you come back and talk about that, because that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, even if you own rental property with somebody else, you probably need a buy-sell agreement, because Absolutely. If you don't, when something happens to you, all those properties, guess what? They're caught in it. But with the buy-sell agreement, it can avoid some things, some pitfalls. So we'll have to have you come back and talk about that at a later date.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
So as we are about to go ahead and conclude, and just to let you know, Alice Martin says, this is just what I need. Okay,
Sure.
so that is
Praise
so
God.
amazing. So thank you, Sister Alice. Listen, as you can see tonight, we really talked about making a positive difference, planning. You know, as I said, nobody plans to fail in life, right? We don't wake up in the morning, you know, get out of bed and say, today I'm going to fail, right? No, we don't do that. But the question is, are we failing to plan? You know, Attorney Griffin shared the statistics, right? 50% of the general population, you know, do not have their estate plan in order. 70% of the African-American community do not have theirs. So let's go ahead, now that we've been enlightened with this information, let's go ahead and take action. And so we want to go ahead and put up on the screen Attorney Griffin's website. And so there it is right there. And I would encourage you to go ahead and visit her website. She said that, you know, you can send an email and, you know, they'll give you, they'll send out a questionnaire. So at least that will help you move forward. That'll help you move in the right direction of, you know, really making sure everything is in order. And as she said, you know, if it's the Griffin, law firm, or if it's another, but you want to take action. That was her real charge for tonight. So again, on behalf of the Real Money Coach, we say thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here with us, because again, each one teach one, each one reach one. As Tony said, we have a very special guest next week, real estate. We're going to be talking about real estate. And so you want to go ahead and be with us. And so with that, we would like to say thank you and continue walking in the greatness that you are, because there's greatness within you. Remember, a vision without action is just a dream. A lot of action without a vision is merely a passing of time. But a vision with action can change the world. Stay blessed.